So my name is Linette Coste. I am the head of events and partnerships here across campus. We're a co-working space based out of Los Angeles, California.
You raised the bar on how nice people dressed at the office because everyone else was like barely out of pajamas.
I think because I wear heels every day and there's concrete floors, it's also this stomping that
it is not that. It is the whole ensemble. Do you see how people dress across campus?
I know. So for me, it's still a step down because I was so dressed up before, right? So I had suits all the time, heels all the time. So this is dressed down, which is nice because it's more comfortable. But I don't know if I can come in joggers yet. I have sneakers on today, though.
They're also like fancy.
I'm an events geek, nerd. I love events. I love events from, the small dinner parties that you have in your house to the really big festivals. I can't walk through an event without thinking about all the logistics of it. Sometimes it's annoying because you get really irked when you think you could be doing things a little bit better. And sometimes it's completely jaw-dropping and awe-inspiring, and you just want to be better at what it is that you do. Yeah. I went to a Kappa Ball recently. It was a black and white affair. And it was lovely, and they had this huge programming, and it was great. And at one moment, the MC asked for the AV guys to bring the house lights up just to recognize people that were in the audience. Well, he forgot to bring them down for like half an hour. And that entire half hour, I couldn't focus on any piece of the program because these lights weren't back down. And I kept looking at every corner to see where he was, to see if I can give him a cue to bring them down. That's the downside of what it is that we do, that you get distracted sometimes at events because of small things like that.
So tell me about your life before you started high school. So where did you grow up? Do you have siblings? What's that?
Sure. So I'm originally from New York City.
Real New York City, not like outside.
Not in the outskirts. But I'm from New York City, the actual New York City inside of it. I'm from Washington Heights and Inwood. So I was born in the Heights, grew up in Inwood until I was about 8 years old.
Is the Heights, is that Lin-Manuel? Is that where his first play is based on? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Which I saw four times. 2 times off Broadway before people even knew what it was. 2 times on Broadway. I mean, I was a fan. Yeah. And I used to run into him at coffee shops in Harlem all the time, even after in the Heights. So, yes, it's Washington Heights, the Heights for short. Okay. But yeah, I was born in Washington Heights, grew up in Inwood until I was about 8, 9 years old. My parents are Dominican. They immigrated. They settled in Washington Heights, Inwood. It used to be an Irish and Jewish community. And throughout the 80s and 90s, it became predominantly Dominican. So, we were on our little island. We were like a little Caribbean island on this really big American island called Manhattan and Uptown. I had 2 brothers.
Older?
I have
Younger?
2 older brothers. And we just used to run amok in Inwood.
What were some of your interests or things you loved to do? So,
as a kid, I was a tomboy, an uncoordinated tomboy. So I had 2 older brothers, and they're 5 and 7 years apart from me. So they're a good amount older than I was. And in my family, I'm very close to my cousins, but they were all boys, with the exception of one other girl. And she lived half the time in the Dominican Republic, half the time in New York. And she was kind of a tomboy too. So we were never very girly girls. But my mother, she had 3 kids. 2 boys and a girl, and she waited out for the girl because she wanted a girl.
And then she got a tomboy.
But she really wanted a girl. She wanted a girl to wear dresses and skirts and put pretty things in bows. So I kind of grew up in this mix of, I was kind of a tomboy because I used to like climbing on stuff and like playing video games with my brothers and fighting with them, like physically fighting with them. But my mom made me wear skirts, and I liked looking pretty. So it was a little weird. In school, I was a nerd. I was always pulled into like gifted classes. So grew up going to public school in New York, and they always identify students from a really young age. They put you in a gifted class. From that gifted class, there was a really great junior high school in New York called Mott Hall. It was a public school that you had to test and interview to get into. It was elementary and junior high school. I went from the 4th to the 8th grade.
How did you feel? Did you want to go to it?
Yeah, it was cool. Like I got to be in a class that did better things than other people. We were reading far ahead of other students. You tested into the school. The school had a lot of prestige.
What about the school made it special? Like how was the school structured differently than other schools?
Yeah, so it was focused on math and science.
Okay.
It was a lot smaller than the other schools. So New York City public school system is massive. The schools are massive, and they were focused on math, science, and technology. We had all these programs that would come in. We would have people from like JP Morgan come in and teach business classes and finance classes to 5th graders.
Wow.
Bill Gates went in and donated our computer lab to our school.
Wow.
And because we were, a magnet school, we were kind of raised to know that, and our expectations were much higher. It was really like, no, you have to do better than whatever it is that you're doing. You are in a magnet school. So I think that kind of laid the foundation of just the way that I kind of am. The downfall to our school and the New York City Post, we didn't have extracurricular activities really.
And why didn't they?
Space. Our school was really small.
Okay.
Probably budget also. What I did participate in was a group that came in from the outside called NDI, National Dance Institute.
Okay.
If you wanted to be a part of them, you could stay behind, and they did it in like our cafeteria. And you take dance classes once or twice a week, I think, and do a performance every year.
Okay. How was the commute from where you lived to that school?
Yeah, so that school was in Harlem, and we moved in between me being at that school. So I lived in Inwood, which was, my street was 204 as a kid. Then we moved to 160th.
Okay.
It's about 4 or 5 miles away.
Yeah.
And then my school from there was a little bit further down. When you are in the 4th and 5th grade, you take a bus.
Okay.
So somebody would walk me to Broadway and wait for the bus. But 6th grade, you're on your own. And
really?
You
have to take the train?
You have to take the public transportation. It was great. So as a kid, you're so independent in New York.
Yeah.
I knew how to navigate the train system. I knew how to navigate the bus system. And then it makes you super curious.
Okay. So you go there through 8th grade. And then what type of high school did you go to?
Yeah. So I went to another magnet school. Okay. So they're called specialized high schools in New York. And again, you have to test to get into them. And part of, going to Mott Hall in junior high school was having access, like I said, to all these other groups that were interested in us. And one of them was a group that was developed specifically at the time for the kids in my school. And it was called HEAF. It stood for Harlem Educational Activities Fund. What their intent was to take kids who were smart from an underserved community and ensure their success through high school and college. Starting in the 8th grade, the first thing that they did was that they gave us prep classes for the exam to get into specialized high schools. If you got into a specialized high school, you can continue on into the program. So did the program, got into Brooklyn Tech. I was so excited because I was going to go to school in Brooklyn. Like commute was painful, but I went to school in Brooklyn. The focus in education was math, science, engineering, and technology. But in your sophomore year, at the end of your sophomore year, you have to pick a major. So it's kind of like college.
Oh, wow. And what did you pick?
And I ended up choosing architecture. And it was pretty cool. It was very different than what I thought it was going to be.
How so?
So when I thought architecture, I thought it was a lot of freehand drawing. I thought I was going to be drawing buildings and bridges and.
Were you a good drawer?
I was okay. It wasn't that. So we learned how to use AutoCAD, and it was CAD all day, all night. And I was really good at CAD. Became, really good at using CAD without paying a lot of attention. One of my teachers shared his classroom with an engineering teacher. And one day he asked me if I wanted to help him on a project for school. Okay. Our school had gotten a really massive grant from the alumni. We had, I think it was like a $10 million endowment from our alumni.
What high schools have endowments?
A high school that had really smart people had graduated our school and really attributed their success to our school and started giving money back. But they wanted to start seeing programs put into action. Because he's like, would you mind coming in like 1 or 2 lunch periods a week and like helping me with data entry or like all these other things?
Yeah.
So you have to do community service in our school in order to graduate. My junior year, an internship became available for an architecture firm.
Were you thinking of that as something that you wanted to do as a career? So then this internship was...
Yeah, it definitely was. I was super interested in it. I loved learning about buildings, and I think part of that's just like growing up in New York. There's so many buildings, so I loved it. I loved the opportunity, and I went and I interned at this architecture firm, and I spent half my time, cataloging massive blueprints, which is great because I start going through them and looking at them, and the other time working with their marketing department. Whether it's like grant proposals or putting together packets for their press kits, but I then saw what the architects did. So by the time that I was a senior in high school, I was like, I don't think I want to be an architect. I'm very, very thankful for having had that opportunity to experience that at a really young age. My high school experience wasn't just my school.
Yeah.
It was, I had my school, I had an internship that I kind of, dealt with grown-ups and adults on the outside. I went to a school outside of it. So I had this population of kids that I knew outside of my school. And then I had HEAF. So HEAF was the program, and they were great. So they tracked and monitored you through your high school career. And I was more afraid of showing my report card to them than my parents, because part of the program was that you couldn't get below, I think, an 80 in a class or an 85. And if you did, you had to go to tutoring. So you were
going to pass.
You're going to pass. You're going to pass. You're going to do well. So, I didn't always get past 85 in some of my classes. So I used to have to go to tutoring, and we would have meetings, and we would have retreats, and they would give you these life skills to really prep you for college.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I remember the most and best was, there's 2 of them. One was speech, right? So we had this woman from Juilliard come in and just work on our speech.
Yeah.
Your comfort speaking in front of people. And that was for prepping for college interviews. The other one was one of our retreats. I always remember this conversation about being bicultural. Majority of the students in HEAF were either first, second generation Latino students or African American kids. And they taught us about being bicultural. So we read, things like Julia Alvarez's books. And she has this book about, coming in and like, she's completely different than her family back home because she knows English and she's living this like double life. So it's this double life that you live as a child of immigrant parents or even as an African American kid who's one step further than what your parents were.
Yeah.
And you have more exposure and really becoming comfortable with that. So that when you go away to college and you're at a school where you are really the minority, right? Because you don't feel that in Washington Heights when everybody's Dominican. You don't feel it in Harlem. You don't even feel it in this high school in Brooklyn that has 4,000 kids, but there's so many people who look like you. But what happens when you go away and all of a sudden you're part of the 2%?
Were you bilingual in your home? Did your parents teach you Spanish?
Yes. Okay. So Spanish is my first language. I did not learn English probably fluently until I was about 6.
Wow.
When I was really young, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And because of that, while she was going through treatment and, being a mom of 3, I was shipped to the Dominican Republic. So I was sent over there. I really don't know how long it was. Like, I think in my head, sometimes I'm like 6 months to a year.
And how old were you?
Probably 3, 4.
Okay.
But it could have been a year. But I lived with my grandmother out there. And at the time, my cousin was also living out there.
Did your brothers stay?
They stayed because they were already in school. So when I came back, New York City school system, our schools were overcrowded and they didn't have a spot for me for kindergarten. So I didn't go to kindergarten.
Wow.
You know, we had daycare, and then in the later afternoon, my godbrothers took care of me.
Mm-hmm.
My godbrother Charlie, this is, you're gonna laugh at this, super interesting. It was their hustle. They were like, we're gonna start a school. It's me, and it's like my brothers and like all the kids from the neighborhood. This time period of when they're off of school and their parents really aren't home. They're like, yeah, we're gonna start a school. My godmother and my godfather lived in the building next door, and they were the superintendents. So they had the basement. They basically made like a little school, and I learned how to read English from my godbrother at like home. And by the time that I went to the first grade, I knew how to read like completely because.
And so is that why they allowed you to skip kindergarten?
Yeah. So Charlie ended up becoming a teacher.
Well,
a teacher and a pastor. It really helped me out because had I gone into like kindergarten or the first grade, I would have ended up in an ESL class, which I have a lot of feelings about. I just don't think that would have been the best thing for me.
So what are your thoughts briefly about ESL classes?
This is like, I put this big disclaimer on it. Like, this is just from my experience, from what I think. I think it does a little bit of a disservice to keep kids in ESL classes. I understand 1 year, but I think you got to get them out and you got to get them in fully English speaking classes because they're just never going to get ahead. And I kind of saw it in some kids in my school. You know, they were super smart, but they still struggled with English even afterwards because it's, you know, Spanish being spoken at home, but you're not getting the infusion of that other language. But I also believe that you need two languages. Yeah. So when I hear of schools like taking away the second language programs, I'm like, no, you're again doing a disservice.
So you've done the internship, you realize architecture isn't for you. So when you graduated high school, what did you think you wanted to do?
You know, it's so funny like having this conversation because I laugh at how like I'm really bounced around. I didn't have a straight line. I think it was political science at the time.
Why?
Politics was super interesting for me.
What was going on at the time that got you interested?
I believe Bush had gotten elected.
Okay.
So first election that I'm allowed to vote in. I'm 18 years old. Yeah. It's like Bush. I'm a hardcore Democrat. So I also like history. You know, I used to read a lot as a kid. I really like history. It's again one of those things that kind of sticks. And I thought I wanted to be a political science major. I ended up going to school in New York City. I ended up going to Baruch College, which was like a finance school, but I was taking public administration. Again, like after I was in it, some of it was super interesting to me and other things just kind of wasn't. And I was like, okay, I need a job. And I ended up working at a trading firm in New York.
How did you get that job?
So this one is a doozy. My interview date for this trading firm was on 9/11. And they were at the Mark and the World Financial Center. And I woke up super sick that morning, called the person that I was interviewing with, and left her voicemail being like, hey, I can't make it. Fell back asleep, woke up to this, like, you know, the apocalypse in New York. My mom thought I had gone down there. My boyfriend thought I had gone down there. Everybody's like going crazy. Yeah. My brother worked down on Wall Street. So we couldn't get a hold of him. And
was he okay?
He was okay.
Okay.
He saw one of the towers collapse. Like had to run in on Fulton Street to a photography store and walk the rest of the way home, which is like 10 miles. So this is a very like sad, super sad time. A couple of days after, maybe a week after, Karina, the HR person, called me and she's like, hi, want to make sure you're okay. And like just everyone's kind of like, you know, just settling. Are you okay? Like, yeah. She's like, you know, we're still interested in like seeing you for this interview. Our area, you can't access it, but you know, you can go interview with the CEO at his apartment. I went in and I met with the CEO of the company in his penthouse. I was 19 at the time, and it was for like an admin job. And I went in and I met with him in his like penthouse. This is like he was on his way to a funeral for all the people from Cantor Fitzgerald since they had lost, you know, all of their brokerage. And it's just a weird time in life. And, you know, we had a great interview. By the time that I got home, they left me a message giving me an offer. And I worked at a trading firm for close to 3 years. And it was weird. It was so weird. I started working there 2.5 weeks after 9/11. We'd take the train down to Chambers Street, and I'd get out, and National Guard would have to walk me to my office because it was through ground zero. I don't know, like, where the maturity came from to be able to, like, do and deal with any of that. I think that's that New York grit.
Well, I mean, you have been doing that since you were like in middle school. So
yeah, it was very, it was very different. The trading firm was just an incredible environment to work at when you're 19.
How so?
They were a British firm. It was small. The U.S., particularly New York, we sat trading style. One row, everybody has like 7 monitors. There's 35 phone lines in front of you. They're cursing like sailors, and it was like very high stress, and it was always being able to be this kind of sound, non-stressed out person in this environment. I was one of 2 women at the time, so it was Karina and myself. But it was great. It really taught me how to navigate through these different environments. So it was great, and I worked with Karina. I got promoted in 4 months. I was an assistant. We were a small firm. They gave me everything, and it was impeding on my school because I went to school at night. The architecture firm that I had worked for, interned for, one day called me. They were like, "Hey, our office manager is leaving. Nobody knows this place like you do. Do you want to come work here?" And at the time, it was like, I wasn't interested in that anymore, and I was now in this new shiny finance world. Going to this business school, and I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, how much does it pay? A little bit more than what I was getting. I, negotiated my butt off to stay at the place that I wanted to stay at, and I got a raise, and I negotiated study days, and for them to pay for part of my tuition.
What made you think to do that at such a young age?
So part of it was Karina. Karina was my boss, but in a lot of ways, she's been my mentor. There were changes happening at the company, which was one of the reasons why I was given so many more responsibilities. And this guy named Paul McDowell, who was amazing, and another kind of mentor of mine, had moved from Europe to the U.S. to work for us, and he did finance, and he just gave me all these responsibilities, and he taught me about like accounting and doing their books and everything else. And I had mentioned to Karina, she and I were really friendly, and I sort of started reporting more into Paul than her. I had mentioned to her this company that I had worked at, they're kind of poaching me. And she got very nervous.
It's just like, if you're going.
And there were a couple of things that I had kind of been unhappy about, and that seemed like an easier solution. And she kind of tipped off Paul, and he was like, "Hey, let's grab lunch one day." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "So are you happy here?" And I just started saying, like, I was very honest. I was like, "Well, here are the things that kind of like make me unhappy." He's like, "So what could get you to a happy place?" And that's how we negotiated. Okay. It was a really good learning experience for me because I didn't feel like I got things just handed to me. I definitely worked and earned that package, that bump, that whatever. But I also realized that you have to say something. Because companies,
they are not going to give it to you, even though they know that they should.
Because it was so easy for him to be like, "Okay, yep, there you go." They're just not going to give it to you. You have to say something. And it taught me to say something.
So how did you go from that into the events space?
I had a couple of different transitions even within my 3 years there. At the very end, I was working for their broker-dealer arm, and it didn't really get off the ground. So I was like studying for my Series 7, and doing a couple of other things, and I got laid off a week before the company officially shut down. Took a little bit of time off, and started applying for jobs. And I ended up interviewing for Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, and Barclays, and got pretty far along with all of them, and all the positions were kind of admin plus roles, is what I call them, because I was still in school. And I had gotten an offer from Deutsche Bank and gotten an offer from Goldman Sachs got this offer from Barclays. Barclays was just perfect, and they were dragging their feet to give me this damn offer, Yolanda. And, I got this position and I worked there. I was so happy going into work, and quickly got a bunch more responsibilities. And then my mom died. So about a year.
Did her breast cancer come back?
No, different thing.
Okay.
But she passed away about a year or so into me having the position, and it just really changed a lot of things for me. I was super distracted at school. I ended up leaving school, and as I started getting back into the groove of work, it took months for me to kind of get back there. I started training for a marathon. So I started finding my groove again, and I was fundraising. I did it with Team in Training.
Oh, I did Team in Training too.
I love Team in Training.
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah.
What year did I did mine? I trained in 2004 and ran in January 2005.
I did
marathon.
I did it with Team in Training. So I was back at it again. Saturday long runs.
Oh my gosh, I have the worst story with Team in Training. I drank too much water and I had to pee in someone's yard.
Oh, girl. All the places that I peed at.
Well, no, this is expensive,
Beverly Hills Hall.
It was in Buckhead, Atlanta, big houses. I chose this house because it was this winding driveway and the house was far back. So it was I think that I have enough time, and I found a tree, but it was I am an adult. I am not drunk.
Yeah.
But I'm having to pee in someone's yard because I was awful with hydrating because I was always nervous about cramping or not drinking enough water. And so I drank way too much water and would have to, yes.
When you stop recording, I'll tell you about my marathon experience and what I thought had happened, which thankfully did not happen to me. So I started getting this rhythm and groove back, and part of it was you're doing fundraising, training. So how do you fundraise? Well, you do events. And, I also looked around at my colleagues, and I adored my team. They were incredible. They worked really, really hard. My boss was never in town. He had a small kid, and I was just is this the job that I want? Yeah. Part of what they did was roadshow. So they would go out, take a company, and do 6-7 cities in 3 days, meeting with investors. We had a roadshow team at Barclays, but I was very controlling of my team, and I held the hand a lot of the marketing department that did it. So when they would send me roadshow schedules, I would tear them apart. It got to the point where we worked really well together to make sure that these things were executed really well. And because of that, when there was a position open on the marketing team, they poached me. And I remember, so the reason why I brought up Team in Training and the marathon training was because I was I don't know if I want to do that. And I would go on these long runs with everybody that I was training with, and we were just they're therapy sessions. We'd start running, and I'd be well, here's the plus side, and here's the downside. And at the time, I was hourly, but this position wasn't. Because I was hourly and I worked a shit ton of hours, I got overtime. I was well, I'm not gonna make this much money. And like I said, my mom had passed. My dad had passed when I was 11, 22 years old without a safety net. And to me, it was a big deal to take a pay cut or a potential pay cut. And it was a substantial one. And the position was doing hospitality, tickets and merchandise. And I was this is so different. It's so interesting. It satiated the planner in me. So in everything, dotting those I's, crossing those T's, I'm this is great. I love working with this team. So I decided to move over. And it was great. Within 2 years, that role really, really changed and developed. In that role, which was supposed to be kind of an administrative marketing role, I ended up creating, building, problem solving. And that is sort of how I ended up really loving my events world and role. Then all of a sudden you're sitting there, and we always had our television on with the news, and it's Barclays putting a bid on Lehman Brothers. And you're turning around and you're we're buying a bank? What is happening? Yeah. All the companies that I've worked for that I really liked working for have always been smaller. Yeah. And that was a really interesting time. I just remember working so much. There's certain periods in my career that I can't even quantify or understand how I worked so much. I remember I have a dog. I remember giving my dog to my cousin and being can you just take care of her for the next X number of weeks because I just don't know like when I'm going to be home or like when anything is happening. I ended up hating my job, and I ended up getting an offer from the hospital near my house and just kind of like starting to weigh it out, and then having again a really open conversation with the people that I reported into and saying like, hey, I really love this company because I've been here for a long time, and this career that I now have was really because you guys saw something in me and we made this happen. But I'm really unhappy. I don't want to be in this particular role. The benefit of acquiring Lehman Brothers that we acquired a Latin American business, and we started doing a lot of events in South America. And I was like, hey, like, I want to go on to the conferences and events side, and I'm an asset to you because I know Spanish, and you're doing all this stuff down there. There's only one other person on the team that really knows Spanish. And I remember my boss at the time being like, yes, we understand that. No, we don't want you to be unhappy, but also really knowing that they really needed me where I was. We're going to try to make things better, be patient. And I did. I took a chance. So about a year later, my manager called me and she's like, we're going to move you over to the event side. Started working on like larger conferences right away. So a big joke with my best friend at work was that I never took like events 101. Because
you went straight to the big
I went straight into like doing like a 200-person conference.
Wow.
As opposed to like packing the boxes for everybody or doing the packing list or printing the name badges. Like I was just like straight in.
So how was that?
I mean, for me, it was fine. But when I moved over, I got to do such amazing things. I worked on these programs in Brazil, did things all over the country. I was in a happy place again.
Yeah.
It was great again for a short while. And then, other things start coming into play. Been here for a long time.
Yeah, you were at Barclays for a long time.
It was close to 10 years. Yeah. And one of the things that happened throughout that time and with the Lehman integration is that, our team before, we didn't really have like our team structure was very different. And then this became very structured team, very title heavy. And I just became unhappy again. And I didn't really see where the career progression was. And in my personal life at the time, had gone through a breakup, went through a really like rough time after breaking up with this person. It unpacked a lot of feelings. Like it unpacked a lot of feelings. All of my like spheres around my like life were kind of unhappy, and kind of around the same time I had a new roommate. She was awesome. She's from California, and she I started coming out to California with her like the day after Christmas. So like I'd spend Christmas with my family and I'd come out here and I was like, man, it is warm.
Sunny. Yeah.
Sunny. People just look happy in December and January. Over the course of like 4 or 5 years. And every time that I'd come out here with her, I'd be like, man, like I really like it here. I had put it out into the universe that I wanted to move to LA. I took another trip to Guatemala on vacation. Half the trip was by myself, and then the other half, some friends met me there. And we were hiking a volcano. Here, volcanoes. We were hiking this volcano that had just erupted like 5 days before, and I had like one of these very surreal moments where I'm standing on a volcano. There's literally hot magma under my feet. My feet are sweating. We're up there, and I was just thinking about how great I felt, and it had just been so long since I felt amazing. And I thought to myself, why do I feel so great? Well, it's because I decided to take this trip, and I hiked a volcano, and I was like, I can do whatever it is that I want. And I got back to New York, and I went into work. I was on the train. I was crying because I just didn't want to be there. And I called my brother, and I was like, I just can't do this anymore. He goes, okay, like you've been unhappy for a while. He's very pragmatic, right? You've been unhappy for a while, so why don't you just like make a plan, Linette? Like you're a planner, make a plan. So I was like, you're right. Next day, get on the train, crying on the train to work, and I'm like, I texted him and I was like, can't do it, can't do it. I told my boss, and I was like, can't do this anymore. And she was amazing. And she was like, so what's your plan? And I was like, I'm gonna move to California. Like I am moving.
Were you freaked out?
No, I think I wasn't freaked out because the day that I went in and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like that was probably the ballsiest shit I've ever done in my life. But I think I felt a lot of comfort. So my plan was I was going to take 6 months off and have this love letter goodbye to New York because I was going to move. When people look back, they're like, you've never not worked. You know, things are really they're harder out there than what you think, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I didn't graduate college. They're like, you know, you get filtered out of all of these things. And I was like, no. I was like, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take these 6 months off. You know, in my head, I was like, I'm going to do all these things. I wrote down, I was at dinner with my brother and his girlfriend. I wrote down this, like, my New York City bucket list. And that's kind of what I did for a couple of months.
What were some of those things?
Oh my God, like top of the Empire State Building. I had never gone there. A picnic in Central Park. Loved doing that before. The Yankee games, all this stuff. I did a Bikram yoga challenge. So I did it for like 40 straight days. It was supposed to be 30. And for me, I had done Bikram yoga very inconsistently in the past. And there was always somebody in the room that was doing this 30-day challenge. And I was like, shit, I'm going to do a 30-day challenge. Towards the end of that, I went to Spain and Portugal for a couple of weeks. And a great thing happened while I was there. I was traveling by myself. And I met 5 people from LA.
Shut up.
And I was like,
this is a sign.
This is a sign.
Because you're going to have people that you know when you get there.
When I get there. You know, and I got back to New York and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I booked that flight for October 29th. I packed 3 suitcases up. My sister stayed living in the apartment that I had. She stayed with my dog at first. And I came in, I landed here and went to Palmdale, California.
Where is that?
It's an hour away from LA.
Okay.
To live with my friend's mom. Because when she found out that I was moving, she was like, you're staying with me until you get your feet wet. I had always said, I'm going to get a job in a month, guys. People are like, yeah,
good luck.
Good luck. It's going to take you longer. Prep yourself for that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to get a job in a month. Like, I don't understand what I don't get it, guys. And for me, I was like, I've got the experience. And the beautiful thing about events is an event planner will never go broke. I swear. Because you can always freelance.
How did you find a job in a month?
I did.
How did you find the job? And then talk to me about the freelancing event planning.
Saw this position from the creative group. So they're an agency, read it. 10 years experience in financial services for an event manager.
Hello.
And I called. I didn't apply online. I found the phone number. I called them. And I was like, hi. You guys just posted this ad for somebody with 10 years financial experience in investment banking for an event manager. I've got 10 years financial experience in investment banking as an event manager. Yeah. You're not going to find this anywhere else in LA because it's not the role here. It's not the industry that's here.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, well, send me your resume and maybe we'll call you back. So I sent it right away. Like to him, 5 minutes later,
he's calling me back.
The recruiter calls me back. She's like, hi. Tell me about yourself. So I just like go through a very abbreviated version of what you and I have spoken. And she's like, are you free tomorrow? And I went in and I met with like the head recruiter and she's like, oh my God. I did the pressure thing with them. Also, I was like, I'm going back to New York for my niece's birthday. You know, they gave me the offer before I got on the plane. I came home. I was like, guys, got a job in a month.
Like I
said. And it was incredible. The head of the events team had been there for 18 years. The team was really small. It was her and one person, which was me, and we worked inside of a marketing team. She died a month into me working at the company.
Was she sick?
She was sick, which is the other reason why they were so hard pressed to like hire someone.
Oh, because they wanted someone to get trained.
And she and I actually only spent 3 days in person together because she went out on medical leave right away. My landing in LA, the 6 months went exactly as I had planned it. So just like, it was just absolutely insane. It was super emotional too. This woman had been there for 18 years. She was incredible. She created the events team. And then here comes this like New York little whippersnapper, doesn't know what she was doing everything completely different. But I was getting really burnt out. At this point, I think I had lost that ballsiness that I had before.
California made you soft.
It might have made me soft. This is therapeutic for me right now because I'm like, what happened to the guts that I had? And I think part of it was, it was a little bit softer. I felt like, put it this way, she passed away. They sent an email out to the entire company saying that I was taking on over her responsibilities. I didn't get a pay raise. I didn't get a title bump.
Mm.
I didn't get support for 9 months. I wasn't able to hire somebody to support me for 9 months for a team that was supposed to be of two. And I kept plugging through. And I think for me, I felt really wrong going in and being like, hey, you have to do this A, B, C, and D, even though I kind of had them by the
Mm-hmm.
because of her. Because I felt like it was wrong to get this benefit because somebody had passed away. You know, in retrospect, I think about it and I was like, no, because I still kept that ship moving at my own expense, at my own life, my time, my first year here. Like my body was physically going through stress. I remember getting to a point where like I was going to the doctor and I was like, I don't feel well. And she's like, you know, these things are they're caused by stress. Whether it's the eye twitch or the grinding of the teeth, like hormonal cysts in my breast, you know? And she's like, these are all induced by stress. And she's like, you got to get rid of it. I had to leave. If ever I thought I was not capable of doing something, I fucking learned my lesson that I completely was. I was like, I can fucking do anything. I stepped into this person's shoes without skipping a beat. And I know what, like, you know, the downside of that, but I also know like what I was able to do. And the break was supposed to be 1 month. And people were like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I can't go back into an office right now. Like, I just need to like chill out. I was like, I'm going to freelance.
And so then how did you find freelancing gig?
This one was actually straight up networking. I went to Catalina Island with a bunch of event planners. So
how did you know about this?
Yeah, so I met this amazing group of women at the investment bank because I was the only person. Hotel salespeople, they come in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had an interesting story whenever they came in. Oh, brand new, from New York, whippersnapper. This person died. I'm the one that you have to deal with. They all felt bad for me. I actually ended up forging some professional friendships through this network. They were my resource. When I was like, oh, I'm stuck in a restaurant, like, where do I go? I had nobody in LA. I'd flip them an email and be like, hey, I'm looking for this. Any recommendations? Mm-hmm. And they do the same for me. Hey, I'm heading out to the East Coast. I need blah, blah, blah. That kind of network of people. I ended up getting invited to an event planner trip to Catalina Island. And I'm on the boat and I'm there with a bunch of other planners. And they're like, so what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm a freelance event planner. Yeah. Because I am, you know. Well, what are you working on? I'm not really working on anything right now. And, you know, we spent the entire day together just sharing experiences, the things that we do. A week later, one of them called me. They're like, hey, we are, my company just picked up this really big project where we're going to need consultants to come work for us. Do you want to apply? And I ended up working on a horse jumping competition. And it was insane, super busy, really interesting, a whole different world.
Yeah.
And I met through there the other consultants, you know, they're now my very close friends. Mm-hmm. So we met and the project was based on a Long Beach. So we only had to be there 1 day a week. I realized that working in your house is very lonely. It's not what I thought it was going to be. And working at cafes is very expensive.
Because you feel bad about, like, you have to buy something. Because you're like, I'm like using your electricity and I'm taking up a spot. So then you're buying stuff. And then it's like, wow, this is a lot of money that you're spending.
And so what we would do is we would basically co-work
at someone's house. Yeah.
Yeah. So my friend Sasha would come over. She'd come at like 10. Mm-hmm. And she'd bring some groceries. I'd have some groceries. And we would just work together. Mm-hmm. We'd work on projects. She and I, part of our roles overlap, so we made sure that those were the days that we worked on those things together. And we did that, and we had this great project. Through them, my next opportunity kind of came where it was JP Morgan was looking for a consultant for a couple of months. So now I had gone from like this really kind of awesome environment of like at an arena with horses and working out of my house, and then sometimes working into an office and kind of testing out that sort of vibe to then consulting again for a bank. I ended that consulting gig and I had kind of felt a little bit beat up by LA at this point. When I landed, I was like, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. Mm-hmm. The last thing out of that was I wanted to buy a condo here. So I looked at the end of me being at JP Morgan, I was like, okay, I'm like 2.5 years in. Professionally, do I feel like I've really advanced? Felt like very kind of flat. So is it time for me to take my foot off of that gas and see what comes? What's the universe really planning for me? Like, let me run the universe's course as opposed to like steering it. So JP Morgan was done, and I just kind of said, and I said it out loud, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the next couple of months. I'm going to kind of see what's out there here in LA and in New York. Well, the universe ran its course. And I got a text message from one of these women that I had met who was a hotel person who I stayed in contact with, different than the person that invited me on the boat.
Okay.
She was like, hey, this startup who I'm friends with the co-founders, they're looking for a director of events. Do you know of anybody? This is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of interested. She's like, oh, I didn't think that you would be. Okay. I'm going to send them your info. It was very different interviewing style. Was so interested, right? So it's like,
what was it about it that made you interested?
Yeah, so I was like, okay, so you are a co-working space, but you do events, and Dan is really, really passionate about events, and that's just really refreshing. And the one line that he just like hooked me in with was, he goes, "Events are part of our DNA. It is what sets us apart from other spaces." And it was different than the role that I was doing because it's being on the venue side. And I have had zero sales experience. The only thing I've ever sold is myself. And that's a major part of what it is that my like role does. It's selling the space. And I was super curious. I was like, can I do that? And I saw an event in person, and that was like the best experience for me. Like, I walked into the co-working the way that we were set up, and I saw it completely transform over to an event. And I drove that night to San Diego to a friend's wedding. My friends were like, what do you think about this position? And I was like, it is different. I haven't done sales before. I don't necessarily agree with the way that they do things, like the vision that kind of was put out there for me, and the way that I, as an event manager, planner, conference coordinator, I only get the space an hour before. You are crazy. I don't get to be on stage the day before. No way. My friends were like, well, it doesn't sound like you want this job. I was like, oh no, I want it. So I was writing this email to my team because I was like, wow, this is how we kicked off 2017. We did a Super Bowl commercial for Amazon in which Jeff Bezos was walking around our campus.
Really?
Yeah. We did a Super Bowl commercial.
Oh, I need to see this commercial.
Over the weekend. You'll see it during the Super Bowl.
Okay. Oh, yeah, the Super Bowl hasn't happened. Yeah. Which location did he?
Downtown LA.
Shut up.
We had Pete Souza, like, literally inspire. Like, there wasn't a dry eye. And then we had a doubleheader with Rachel Roy that night. And on top of that, there were other events happening on the other campuses. And business kept going, and it made me so excited for what the rest of the year is going to look like.
So now we're going to switch over to what I call like rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then you tell me the first thing that pops into your mind. Okay, so 5 apps or services you can't live without.
Oh my God.
Uh-oh. Take a note.
I just tell you that I thought it was like Instagram. Except that last week I did a January cleanse and I deleted all of my social media apps off my phone.
Yeah.
Not my accounts.
You still have them, but just on your phone.
Just off my phone. And I thought, I went for it like however many times, and I thought it was going to be it. So I think the social media apps were the thing that I thought I had to have.
Yeah.
It's not. Spotify is like, I gotta have it. On a daily basis, it is what just gets me going. I have a speaker pretty much in every room in my house. And there's music going 24/7. I think just iMessage. I know this sounds really funny, but just the texting capability really keeps me going too. I love just staying connected. Living out here on the West Coast, I'm not in the same time zone as my friends and family. There is honestly not a time of day that I can actually get on the phone and have a dedicated conversation with most of my loved ones. Yeah. What's another app or service? Oh, this is going to sound really funny, but like a service, getting my nails done.
Yeah.
I'm slacking right now. And this sounds really funny, but it's just really a part of just the way that
your aesthetic. Yeah.
Your aesthetic, the way that you look and carry yourself. I notice it on people.
I do too, especially on men. Mine look awful. How did you find your salon here?
Oh my gosh, so traveled a lot, needed a dog sitter. I used Rover, the app. built a really great relationship with this couple. The girl, her nails looked bomb. I had worked in banking forever, so
You
I
couldn't do that.
never got to do anything fun with my nails. And then I was here, I was like, oh shit, I have colors. I can have colors. I was like, where do you go? And she's like, oh, I go to this place called Nailed It. My girl's not there anymore. Her name is Sophia. Follow her on Instagram. Lipstick and mixtapes. But yeah, like getting my nails done and just having that, that time to not do anything, right? You can't type. You have to like be in person, connecting with someone. You're doing something to make you aesthetically look and feel better. So definitely getting my nails done. Amazon Prime. Other than that, I don't really know. I don't think anything really is like top of mind that I like absolutely can't like the service that I absolutely can't do without. That is it. That's my day. That's my week.
Who are your possibility models? So these are women of color who show you it's possible to live your dreams, or it could be someone that you think more people need to know about.
Okay, so one of them is actually my aunt. She's technically my cousin. My mom and her cousin were raised like brother and sisters. And this is his wife. All through my childhood, she and I had like a really close bond. And she's another person who didn't have kids of her own. She was just super interesting to me. She was the breadwinner in the house. But yet their house felt very balanced at home. So there was never like power, ego, none of that. But she was definitely like the breadwinner. Stocked her chips, retired young, mid-50s. During her career, she used to manage housing projects in New York. So she worked for the housing development. She managed like this massive project. So like she had a lot of responsibility on her. She loved writing. So she would also teach at universities, teach literature, and write her own books. And she would self-publish. In Spanish, she's written like 4 or 5 of them. They retired. They moved back down to the Dominican Republic. And she just has this like beautiful penthouse with my uncle. There's art absolutely everywhere. She's got this study and she just deep dives and does research for her books. And they travel because they really didn't do it before. And I'm just like, that just sounds lovely. She worked really hard. She still had a very like balanced life while she was working. She retired young and she's still living her life and doing these beautiful things. Immigrant families, especially from the Caribbean, are really interesting because they come to the US, they want to work really, really hard, but they just like burn themselves out and they don't enjoy themselves afterwards. And seeing them do it is like, this is beautiful.
Okay, so if people want to find you online, where should they go?
Okay, so Instagram, I'm L Coste, Lcoste. LinkedIn's a good one. I'm pretty active in LinkedIn. If I'm not posting a lot, I'm definitely reading and reaching out and connecting with people. I'm super open to InMail. I take my time to respond back to it.
All right, I'll put links to those in the show notes for your episode. Okay, so final question.
Okay, awesome.
The name of this podcast is How She Did It. If you could go back in time and give yourself some career advice, what would you say?
Ooh. See, like instinctually, I'd probably say like have more direction, right? Like have more of a plan.
But you've done all these cool things.
But yeah. So like I think like instinctually, like remember the control freak, the person wants to steer the ship and think, like have more direction. I think that's like what I would say, but in reality, it's to take some of the chances that I took earlier. And I don't know if the outcome would have been the same. I was really, really mature at a young age. And part of that was just life things. Part of it was the experiences. And I feel like I've gotten less mature as I gotten older, which I'm totally fine with.
You're like Benjamin Button in reverse.
I made that big bold move at 32, and it's like, what would that move have been like at 28? Because now, I still have the energy. Every once in a while, I'm like, man, like, is this battery gonna run out? I really think about that, and like, I don't know, like, is this battery gonna run out? I still feel full of energy, full of life, but if this was like at 28. Would I be kicking more ass than what I am right now? So I kind of wonder those things, and it's not being afraid afraid to take chances kind of earlier.
And that's the show. For links to the things we discussed in this episode, go to yolandaenoch.com/12. The background music for this episode is Lip Gloss by Ponington Bear.